So, uh, welcome to first edition of RJ's Pit Stop. This is somewhat of an introduction since it's my very first attempt at it in terms of a YouTube channel. Um, I'm a Jamaican looking to speak on primarily Formula One, but other motorsport issues as well, both worldwide, international motorsports and local ones, as well as eventually we might branch into some classic car stuff and just general automotive content, in fact. But initially, we're gonna start out with F1 because that's one of my passions. um, let's look at this race that just went on, Austin. I had a kind of prepared review after watching the race today, but then of course, breaking news tonight: Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc have been disqualified. The FIA legality plank at the bottom of the cars, after scrutineering, post-race scrutineering, has been found to be less than the legal minimums, and they are disqualified. So that dramatically changes the results. Has implications, championship implications too, because this is the second race in a row that Lewis didn't score any points, and Checo scored decent points this time around. And in fact, with these disqualifications, it moves him up a bit. In these initial videos, I'm not gonna give you any statistics and stuff like that, because the truth is, you can get that anywhere. I mean, we can eventually maybe move to a point where we have that, but for now, it's just gonna be a kind of discussion format. So I'll start with, well, I'll go into what I had kind of planned to say, but I made sure to preface it with that news. So Red Bull. I think we're seeing the results of essentially a car that has not had a development cycle since, I believe, summer of this year. And so the gap is clearly narrowing. Oftentimes, as in the last race with the enforced tire strategies and so on, there will be circumstances that make it look closer than it really is. But the fact is, it is getting closer. Unlike in the earlier stages of the season, where it was essentially just a runaway. Now we see clearly other teams making advances. Mercedes has made a huge strides over the year. McLaren has made a dramatic step lately. Just generally, people are getting better at what they're doing. The brake problem that Max clearly had, and he clearly had it, because if you think about his performance in the sprint yesterday, his ability to put 9 seconds basically over 18 laps, is clearly that gap didn't exist today. Yes, tire and fuel and so on played a role, but the truth is, clearly he did not have the advantage that he had yesterday in today's race, and he had to work for it. And I believe there's a reason why he's 3-time world champion. I mean, the fact that he could adjust his driving style sufficiently to compensate for that and still start sixth and move through the field and still eventually win is a testament to his abilities, I believe. I believe in giving credit where credit is due. You'll find that to be a theme as we go along, and hopefully you'll join me on the journey as we go along. You'll find that is a theme with me. I believe in giving credit where credit is due. Yes, I will have favorites, and all of us have biases, but I try to be fair in how I give credit or assign criticism. Sergio did well. He started 9th, finished 5th. That's pretty good. But again, and now with the thing with Hamilton, I think he's gonna move up to 4th, which will do his second place bid for in the drivers' champion a lot of favors, because this is the second race in a row, as I said, as Hamilton has failed to score, And so he's clearly gonna, benefit from that. Perez, he's gonna go into Mexico with a spring in his step, no doubt. But notwithstanding that, I still have not seen what I had hoped to have seen from him. I still haven't seen him decisively show us that he's driving the best car on the grid. I'm not seeing that, just not seeing it. I still see him mixing it up with the McLarens, the Ferraris, and the Mercedes, even sometimes Alpines or whatever. And that's not the natural position a Red Bull should be in at this level with this current RB19. It's just not. So I think we can safely say that Perez is still, despite any individual result, still isn't meeting expectations. Mercedes. So this will obviously what I had planned to say is now dramatically colored by the disqualification. No, but firstly, I thought Lewis drove a great race. It's his second race in a row that, even though the 30 seconds of the first race that he did, that previous race, I thought was good in the move that he tried, even though it failed. This is the second time in a row now I see where he did something that I said, yes, great drive, brilliant. Perfect, maybe not. I think he had one or two little small errors. I think he himself acknowledged that part of the slow pit stop is because he didn't hit his marks. And I think he may have had he kind of ran wide, understeered off a bit in corner one and so on. And maybe the cumulative effect of that might be a second or two, which impacts heavily on look how close the margin was at the finish. But the truth is, it was a great drive, and the team's strategy, I believe, impacted on the result more than his driving. Because I think the offset was a good idea, but definitely he should have come in 2 laps sooner. I mean, hindsight is always 2020. Me here now, I'm saying this after the fact, seeing what happened, where the tires basically fell off a cliff. In the circumstances, strategists might have thought it was the right call, but I think he should have pitted, at the time. I think he should have pitted with Lando, for example, essentially right after. But he didn't, and ended up losing the race by a second or two. And now that this has happened, he's got no points at all. Russell did okay, but and again has moved up because of what's happening here. But really and truly, it actually speaks to one of the hypocrisies of the sport and the fans in how they interpret things. When you think about how Red Bull has been criticized for developing a car for Verstappen, meaning and leaving Checo, floundering. If you look at what has happened, look at last year with Russell and Hamilton and how they were. I thought Russell was basically at the same level or even better in a lot of cases. Since Mercedes has taken the development path this year, which has undoubtedly improved the car, it was necessary, it had to be done. But it was also clear that development path is along the line of what suits Hamilton, because Russell has essentially fallen off. With the more the car gets better for Hamilton, is the less Russell seems capable of dealing with it. And yet I don't hear that Mercedes is favoring Hamilton. I don't know. But anyway, it is what it is. Suffice to say, I think Mercedes is definitely on the right development path. I made heavy weather in posts that I used to make on it before we started this video, whole video series, that, Mercedes, the zero side pod thing should have been abandoned almost immediately. They carried it into this year. Finally, good sense prevailed at some point, and they abandoned it. And since that, they have improved leaps and bounds. And considering that there's continuity of the rule for next year, I think they have a very strong contender to start the year if their development path continues as it is. Much as I would say the same for McLaren. McLaren, well, Lando, wow. great drive again. I think the tires really or the tire degradation, I should say, is what has mostly been McLaren's Achilles heel. And you can clearly see it here. You saw it in the sprint and you saw it here. They have the pace. The cars are fast. The drivers are good. And on low fuel loads or fresh tires or both, they can essentially match or even beat the pace of their immediate competitors. In fact, Lando has said, and I take it at face value, that he feels he's on par with Red Bull through the high-speed corners when his car is working right. But they just can't get the tires to live. I think that's more a factor of suspension than air. I think their mechanical grip, it's just set up, their suspension geometry is set up in a way where it's killing the tires at low speeds. And I think that probably is where they're, obviously, because where they're weak, it's where their focus is going to be in terms of next year. And their aero, however, is spot on. And if they get that right balance between aero and mechanical grip going into next year, I think they're going to be awesome as well. So I think both McLaren and Mercedes are absolutely going to hit the ground running next year, barring some really unforeseen thing. Ferrari. That was such a nonsensical strategy call by Ferrari with Leclerc that I can't help but think Leclerc is now literally looking for an exit strategy. In the sprint, it was obvious to Stevie Wonder that tire degradation is a critical thing for Ferrari. Why? What rationale would you apply as a strategist to put the pole sitter, your faster driver, the pole sitter, on a one-stop strategy in a car that has high tire deg? I'd love to hear that explanation by the team. How do you rationalize putting the faster driver on a one-stop strategy when the car has a very high level of tire degradation as the laps go on? It simply means you're setting him up to fail, because obviously he should have been on a two-stop at the very least. The minimum it should have been was the same strategy as Sainz. So that is just insanity. I thought that Sainz drove very well, and definitely he's good. I mean, Sainz is good, but to the point where you almost wonder if Sainz is now seeing that Charles is getting frustrated and is thinking that, hey, this is where I'm going to step in as the number one driver. Because I think Leclerc is by now just fed up of Ferrari, honestly. He says the right thing sometimes and, oh yeah, next year. But I think he's fed up. Mentally, I think he's over. I think he by now he just thinks that he cannot trust anything that the team does. The Alpine, I thought, did very well. Gasly is a good driver. Ocon, kind of a wild card. He good when he's ready, but like yesterday, the foolishness that he did, and then today again, hitting Piastri. Whereas I don't think today was deliberate or anything like that. It wasn't like carelessness, but man, I tell you, that's just just unacceptable. Sorry, that's just crazy. I should have mentioned Piastri earlier in the McLaren story, because unlike previous times, Lando had his measure this weekend. Lando was faster than him the whole time. So I thought Piastri was just on the back foot. I don't know if this track don't suit him. It was very bumpy, as a number of guys have complained. Maybe it just doesn't suit him. I'm not sure. But Lando definitely was quicker than him, and it showed. But yes, this incident with Ocon, clearly, that was not his fault. But it is what it is. But Alpine, I will say that the change of management, I think, is good. I think they might have a misstep or two on the way. I mean, they're a French team, and if you know history, you know that can be unpredictable. But I do believe that they're on the right path, and I think that Gasly and Ocon are good drivers for them, and I think they will do well, because they were pretty quick today. Aston Martin. Now, I came down really hard on Stroll in the past, and I still don't think I'm gonna change my mind. But he did drive. He gave a solid drive today. Can't ball over that. He gave a solid drive today. But the fact is that the development is a disaster. How can the fact that Alonso had to go back to the previous Aero package tells us that there's something went wrong there. I mean, this is supposed to be a big package. This is something that they pinned a lot of hopes on. It just didn't work. He was clearly faster on the older package than the new package. So I think they need to step back and, well, I guess there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in that team, ownership-wise and all of that. I suspect there's some big announcements to come. I mean, there have already been some stuff with the sponsors, but I think there's going to be some bigger announcements to come with ownership. That's my gut feeling. Williams did well. It kind of a same, I don't want to say, same feces, different day. Because Albon is again out driving the car. I think Albon is outstanding. Definitely deserves a better car. Even though I think Williams is eventually coming along, but it's going to take him a couple of years to get there. I think Albon deserves a better car while he still has the talent to do it. He's really driving beyond the limits of the car. I thought that Sargent was lucky in the sense where, obviously because of this thing with Leclerc and Hamilton, he's now, both of them I think are now in the points, which is great for the team. But I think, so this is Sargent getting his first points on US style, which is, which is a home race for him. So that's a pretty good thing for him on a personal level, but I don't think it's really reflective of his pace. It's just lucky circumstances. Alphan has, as usual, ping-ponging around at the back. It's hard to say these things because I really like these guys. There's necessary to have these teams, and you keep hoping that they'll get their act together. But they're just too inconsistent. One time they're good, next time they're bad. Next time they're good, next time they're bad. The Alpha was pretty good the last race meet at Qatar. No, I don't know. They're just banging around the back. So I mean, to kind of summarize, I'll tell you, Red Bull is not as dominant as people make them sound. Especially like sometimes when you listen to Hamilton, it's like they're just disappearing into the distance. Yes, they started like that, but that can't be said now. And it's not because of like a one race. If you look at top speeds for the past few races, quite a few races in fact, probably the last 6 or 8, Red Bull has not always had the fastest top speed. In fact, more often than not, they don't. Sometimes in a particular circumstance, like a big wing race like this, where the DRS might have a greater effect because of the angle of the wing, you might see a big speed difference on a straight. But in general, a lot of the other teams have caught up quite considerably, especially with speed, which was really the advantage that people were saying they had. You could just blow past, Verstappen could just blow past you on the straight. That's definitely not the case now, right? So I think that the development race is working, and as long as the other teams are consistent and don't make errors, I think you'll see closer and closer racing towards the end of the season. I would say that sprints, I was still, even though the last sprint was great, it was great because of the tire issue that Pirelli had with the curbs. This time around, it was very predictable. And it also, unfortunately, makes the race not necessarily predictable, but it gives a good precursor of what's coming in the race. Because you kind of see what's going to happen already with the sprint, right? People kind of set up what they need to set up and you get a feel, which I don't like. It kind of takes away from the excitement of the race, which I have a problem with. I also have a fundamental problem with the principle of the no setup or the no change of setup after FP1. Because essentially, it's saying that if you make a small mistake in the setup, you're tied into that for the rest of the week. That's not representative of racing. Why do you have this massive cadre of engineers and computers and all of this technology when you can't change the car? That literally to me makes no sense. The essence of Formula One and level of racing at this level in general is you come to the track, you fine tune and you adjust until you find an ideal setting, and then you race with that. I can understand having a cutoff at a certain point, but not after FP1. That is illogical, and that's what is happening with the sprints. I don't like that. So I genuinely think if you can't get rid of the sprints, if FIA, not FIA, FOM really, decided they want the sprints because it's a commercial, success, and it probably is. Liberty Media and the whole of them combined. It's all about money. If you're gonna have the sprints, then you're gonna have to look seriously at the format and some of the regulations for it. That's my opinion with sprints. Now, just to revisit again what we said at the beginning, Leclerc and Hamilton are disqualified. Can we ask a couple, not controversial, but maybe logical questions? Is it that Mercedes' newfound pace with the new floor is because they're running it too close to the ground? Is it because this track is a little bumpy, why it has kind of revealed that it's rubbing away the legality plank that the FIA stipulates? Bear in mind, this is not a new rule. That FIA legality plank has been in existence for many, many years. And everybody knows the rule. There's a minimum clearance below it. And there is a minimum thickness that it must be at the end of the race. So when it rubs and you see the sparks and the dust, there is a minimum amount that must be left on that plank. And if you run the car too close to the ground, you're going to rub it off. So makes you wonder, I don't know, is it that's the only way that the floor works, that Mercedes' new floor that has to run really close to make the aero work? I don't know. And if it is, then they're going to have a problem. We'll see. Or maybe it's just because this track was particularly bumpy. Time will tell, because it's still a new aero package. I think this is the first time they're going to run the floor. So we'll see. Anyway, that's my first video. Feedback, comments, whatever, much appreciated. And let's see where it goes. Good night.